Good morning and welcome to the Retired Living Truth series. Today's topic is the truth about advocating for yourself and those you love. And those we love could also be friends. So it doesn't have to be someone we love, but someone we care about. Yes, I guess those you love and care about. So I have some amazing panelists here today who I'm going to bring up just shortly. But someone just before asked me, well, how did you come up with today's topic about advocating? So I guess it was 2 years ago, we did a mastermind where a number of people from this group sat down with us and we... Thank you. Is that better? Yeah, maybe I'll just use one of these. So as I was saying, we usually get together with attendees and brainstorm coming up with topics. And that's how today's topic came about. And actually, I'd encourage you all to start thinking about topics you might like to see next year if you plan on being here. And in fact, while I'm on that so I don't forget, let's just turn over the yellow piece of paper that you should all have, the evaluation form, if you wouldn't mind. And if we turn to the blank side, if you could just write at the top, 2023 topics. And then if you think of topics in the next 90 minutes, if you could just write them down, a topic you would like to see next year. No promise that we'll be able to get to that topic, but we'll look at them all. And if there's common themes, everyone's written down advocating, for example, that's probably likely to be a topic for next year. Well, it won't be because we're doing it today, but you get the idea. Yeah, so if you do think of some, please write them down. So if we think back, can anyone remember advocating for their young children? Maybe they were being bullied, or we just needed to support them in some way in terms of the class they wanted to get into, or someone was maybe giving them a hard time. Just show of hands if we can remember advocating for a child. Yeah, pretty much all of us. So we're good usually at advocating for others, but sometimes we forget to advocate for ourselves. And Annette and I in real estate and move management, helping clients who are moving, some clients we come across are really good at advocating and standing up for themselves. And others are a little more timid and afraid to, ask questions or state what they want. Or when they're talking to their adult children, they're reluctant to advocate that I do not want to move there. Or I do want to move there, and that's where I'm moving, and I don't care where you think I should move, that's where I'm going, because I'm an independent adult and I have the right to choose. So we kind of see both, people who are willing to advocate and those not so much. So we wanted to talk about that today and just talk about different types of advocating, both for ourselves and for others. So with that said, I'd like to have our panelists come up and join me, Ashley, Chaplain Chaz, and Teresa. And for those who are new, I know a couple of people asked, are we taking a break today? So the format is, I have prepared questions on your behalf that I'm going to ask our panelists. And at 11 o'clock, we're going to open it up, as we always do, to the questions you have of the panelists, and then you can ask them. And then we'll wrap this up at about 11:30. So if I could start with you, Ashley, could you introduce who you are and why you might be here today for this topic?
Hi, my name is Ashley Taylor, and I am the care manager for Rosa. A large part of what we do is actually education and advocacy for our clients.
Hi, good morning. My name is Chaplain Chaz, and first and foremost, I'm a ambassador council member for the UNR Sanford Center for Aging's Senior Outreach Services Program. Phenomenal program. I also serve as a director and spiritual care chaplain for Circle of Life Hospice. And then lastly, I serve on the command staff for the Great Basin Chaplain Corps, and I lead our 28 teams from law enforcement to fire, hospital, and homeless and displaced populations. So I serve a wide variety of different people that I advocate for.
Thank you, Chaplain Chaz. Teresa.
Good morning, everyone.
Oh, sorry, I'm signaling. I need...
Oh.
This one's not working, needs batteries. Sorry, Teresa.
That's okay.
Lots of technical challenges this morning.
I understand. I'm glad they're not mine. My name is Teresa Cook, and I own Cook Elder Navigation Services, and I help adult children and elders advocate for themselves. And I also help adult children and elders navigate the many, many challenges of aging. So to just give you a brief example, when my mom started aging and having different issues, I guess it was about 2012, my 3 older sisters and I realized that she needed help. There was some spoiled food in the refrigerator, dents in the car, and cigarette burns on the carpet, which concerned us. So here is an example of not navigating correctly. We said, oh, well, we're going to take care of this and we're going to bring in caregivers. That didn't work out so well. In fact, my mom barricaded us out of our house, out of our home. She barricaded us. And she said, just like this, you girls, stop doing things without talking to me. So that's navigating gone wrong. Advocating gone right, just briefly, is when my mom was 87, and in February 2014, she was hospitalized 4 times and in the ER, and each time we went in. And the last time I said to the nurse, I said, you know, we've been here 4 times. Can you help me to understand what's going on with my mom? Because you run the same tests and same old stuff happens. 5 minutes later, we had a hospice nurse come in to see us who told us our mother was dying and that she had 6 months to a year to live. So what happened is we brought in hospice, and my mom died the following Tuesday. That was a Friday. So the good thing is I advocated. And the other good part is that I was able to at least give us a few extra days with my mom and giving her comfort care. So that's a good example of advocating. So I hope that you understand what I do.
Sorry, lots of microphone problems this morning. Usually goes a lot smoother than this. So thank you so much, Teresa. So could we just talk about what it means to be an advocate? How would we define being an advocate? Maybe we start with you, Teresa. I know you're kind of talking about it, but if we could just spell that out clearly.
You know, what I did is I went online and I asked Mr. Google. That's what I affectionately call him with my grandchildren. Let's go ask Mr. Google. And they describe an advocate as all types of advocacy require excellent communication skills, the ability to be empathetic, but not so empathetic as to lose focus, organization skills, good time management, the ability to do research to solve problems, and a creative side to help solve difficult problems, and the ability to get along with a variety of people, including patients, their families, and professionals. So I think the best way to explain what it means to be an advocate is to give you another example of what happened with my dad. So my dad had had heart attacks early on. His first one when he was 48. And I was in high school at the time. And when my dad had his second heart attack, I didn't understand why this was continuing to happen. And I think a lot of it's because I'm a Cook girl, but we Cook girls kind of take things into our own hands. So I hired cardiologists for my dad. And it was really easy back then. You didn't have to get referrals or anything else. And the next thing that we knew, my dad had a cardiologist. And he wasn't so happy about it. He's in the hospital and he said, well, who did you hire? Who are these doctors? And I said, well, you need a specialist. That's advocating. That's a form of advocating. It would have been nice if I asked my dad, but I was a teenager, so I didn't know any better, but I advocated for my dad and I brought on specialists to help him. So that's a good example, I think, of advocating.
Thank you. So Ashley, you had some different views of what advocating means, not necessarily different, but a different explanation. Can you share with what you told me?
Yeah, so a lot with advocating, you know, whether it be for yourself or for others, is having your voice heard, right? Especially as you're advocating for yourself, making sure that your voice is heard to those that you are trying to get the point across to is very important. So having your notes or going up to, you know, going to your doctor and saying, hey, look, is that really the best plan for me? Is there another option that I can do? So making sure that you are speaking up is a large part of your advocacy, or finding that person in your family or a loved one, or if it's a care manager who can actually go in and be that voice for you, make sure that you trust that person.
Wonderful. Chaplain Chaz, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think I go by the AAA approach, which is being able to just first approach it and having the courage to face whatever you need to advocate for or for your loved ones. Then awareness, which is verbally and talking about it with your support team and your family and friends. And then action, whether that's physically or legally, setting that up. So for example, maybe you go and you approach and have courage to have a pulse filled out, which is a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. And you're on hospice maybe, or living just independently at home, maybe not even at end of life. And you did not bring awareness with your family and friends though, and didn't verbalize it. And you suddenly have a heart attack and your daughter is there and she calls the paramedics, and you filled out a DNR to not be resuscitated. And if they don't look on the fridge and see that pink envelope, then maybe, the paramedics might try to revive you because you didn't speak about it. So you really need to do all three of those to ensure the outcome that you desire.
Thank you. And for those who didn't turn over their handout, I think we actually put some questions on there. Yeah, what does it mean to be an advocate? So on your handout, if you were wanting to take notes just to make it a little bit easier, first question was, what does it mean to be an advocate? And the second question, and maybe I can start with you, Teresa, again, is what are the different types of advocates or advocacy?
The quick answer is yes, there are different types of advocates. In my business, I mainly advocate for elders. And the way I do that is I find out what they need first, because each of us are individuals and we all have individual needs where we might need an advocate. An example is I had a client with Parkinson's and Parkinson's related dementia, and he did not have family in town. So I acted as his advocate at the VA hospital, and I had a binder full of all of his information, and I was able to advocate for him during his different hospitalizations. I gave him his voice to the medical team there. So in my business, I'm generally advocating for elders, and I help the adult children navigate the process and work as a team with their parents if at all possible.
Ashley, you had some thoughts about different types in addition to what Teresa just shared with us.
Yeah, so there are many different types of advocacy. So there is self-advocacy, there is a loved one to advocate for you, there's, companies to advocate for you. One of the things that I always say to make sure that you do is make sure that that person, if you have somebody else advocating for you, make sure that they know that they are your person and that they know exactly what it is that you want. Having them know will end up in a much better situation in the end, because then they're not questioning it, right? So if you have a binder that has everything in it, like your power of attorney or who your trust is, those are all really great ways to ensure that you get everything across. We care for both special needs, those with disabilities, elderlies that need those advocates. So it's not just an elderly that might need an advocate. You may also be advocating for maybe a younger loved one that you have. So just making sure that whoever it is that's doing that for you actually knows what it is that you want. And again, making that voice be heard.
So I heard a couple of things from what you both said. One, there's advocating for ourselves, advocating for someone else. So they're two different types. And then there's who's doing the advocating, which is another form. But then you also touched on something else. There was verbal, someone speaking on your behalf, or you're speaking for yourself, advocating. But then you mentioned about written. I hadn't really thought about that. So you can advocate for yourself by having it in writing.
Absolutely. So like power of attorneys, those are big ones. Also you have, if you have a written trust or your will, just because, there are such things as living wills, right? And that again is a written down, what do I want to have done? Much along with your power of attorney and making sure that that person knows, but having like a binder, for instance, right, that says, this is who my primary doctor is. This is the person you need to call if there's ever an emergency. Sometimes we forget to update those things at the hospitals. So having those written down where it's set, and that can go with you, or, even if you're trying to do a bid on something, right? Your roof, you have to get your roof bidded and you don't quite know what it is that you want to have done or the pricing. So you have all that written down, and maybe take that to somebody else and have them look at it with you to ensure that you're getting the exact right thing. Advocacy isn't just medical. It can be for anything in your life.
Wonderful. Chaplain Chaz, I know you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I think just we are our biggest advocates, right? And just really making sure known our wishes. If we don't have those conversations, then those who are advocating on our behalf may not even know how we want to be advocated. So just really be yourself, your biggest advocate.
When we were talking last week, you were saying what the percentage of people were that actually have something in writing in terms of, like, I think maybe you're talking about events.
Yes. So there's two different kinds of things. I know you guys have touched before on living will, which is a form of advanced directive. And another one is the portable POA, power of attorney for medical decisions. And then you also have a pulse for end of life. But they did a study from Huntsman's Cancer Research Institute a few years back, and it showed that American adults, about 70% have heard of one of those forms, but only 29% nationwide actually had one filled out or completed.
That's staggering. So we're not doing a very good job as a population advocating
Right.
for ourselves if something happens, are we?
No.
So my next question to you, Ashley. So often we don't fight hard enough for ourselves in terms of advocating. What are some of the different ways that we can better advocate for ourselves?
So one of the ways that I have found to help you be a better advocate for yourself is, writing things down. So I don't just mean like having written down who my power of attorney is, right? So when it comes to writing things down, if you're going to the doctor, or even if you're talking with your family, sometimes our family or friends don't necessarily have the same thoughts that we may have for ourselves. So having it written down will, one, to help you keep on track, right? So that you're staying in the lines that you want to stay in, and it will help you if they start throwing other ideas out there. You can say, well, yeah, but this is kind of, where I want to go with this. And then also it can come again with your roof bids, right? Or you're getting a service in your house, you're having those bars put in your house to help you be safe. Having everything written down, getting those bids, and yes, going to other people and maybe asking for their opinion will help as well. However, having everything and being able to keep yourself in line, and again, just letting your voice be heard, right? So that writing down is one of your biggest things that you can do. And it will also serve as a form of communication if it has to.
So like questions, if I'm meeting with the doctor, writing down what it is I want to know versus going in with a blank slate and then like, what did I have to ask?
Correct. Yeah. So having those questions written down, hey, I'm going into the doctor because I don't think my blood pressure medication is working for me, right? So I'm going to write down what medication it is and go to them and say, hey, I started taking this. It doesn't seem to be working for me. Can you give me some insight on this? Questions that you want to ask about things that have been going on. A lot of times we go to the doctor and we freeze up, right? I know I do. I go to the doctor and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm here because my foot hurts. And that's all I think about, right? I don't think about, oh yes, well, this has happened, which has then caused my foot to hurt. And I just say, oh, my foot hurts. Help me out here, right? So having those things written down will help you to, again, remember, and it'll help you to get your point across to those doctors or your family members or whoever it is. So having the questions, having your thoughts, all that is a great way.
And then Teresa, when we spoke, we all got together last week and we were talking about this. You were talking about also taking notes, the importance of that. But going back to the questions, I think you suggested maybe even sending them to your doctor and how.
Right. I don't know if a lot of us know that you can actually send a copy of your questions prior to your doctor appointment. You can call the doctor's office. And the medical assistant generally will always, you can email the questions prior to the appointment. So the medical assistant will have those to give to the doctor before your appointment. And that can be so helpful. And to have someone come along with you to your doctor appointment who can write down the answers, because most of the time we're listening and we need someone else to advocate for us. Just a quick example of that. My younger son had a dissected carotid artery when he was he was a freshman in high school. And my sister came with me with a legal notepad and wrote down all of the questions because I was a nervous wreck, right? And lots of times we are in a situation where it's an emergency and we need someone to advocate for us. But in getting back to the number one rule of advocacy, I really thought about this more after we talked, Brett. And I think that the number one rule is you have to know what you need. So how do you figure out what you need? And the way to figure out what you need is to have an assessment of sorts. Is it a financial need you have, a legal need? Is it a medical need? Is it a household need, like Ashley said? I mean, you have to get down to what specifically is the need. And if you need help doing that, you can hire a care manager, or you can brainstorm with a family member, but it's figuring out what you need in all aspects of your life. Quite frankly, that's where you've got to start. So
I like that. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And maybe does that start with asking ourselves better questions? Because sometimes we can say it's my foot, but if it's like, well, what is it about my foot? What did I do to my foot? That we'll have better questions then to be able to ask someone else who can help us. Because if we go in, not, as you said, not knowing what it is that we need, we're not going to get very good answers, are we? Yeah, I like that. Chaplain Chaz, what did you want to add?
I think you had mentioned this about, I don't know if you guys are aware that you can have a care conference, and that's where your entire disciplinary team. So let's say you're in the hospital, or maybe you have independent living, and you have in-home caregivers. You can have your doctor show up, either Zoom or in person, a social worker, the care manager, your family and friends. And that's a great place to all be on the same page and to be able to, talk about the questions and get answers from everybody. And there's no he said, she said, it's all in the same place, and you guys can work out a solution together.
Could I do that with multiple doctors I'm seeing?
Absolutely. Specialists?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes.
So they're all on the same page with whatever it is I'm dealing with?
Most definitely.
And so what does that look like? Can you tell us a little bit more about the format and how that works?
Yeah. So again, you really want to first process what you want to be talking about. What are the issues? What questions do you want to ask? Maybe talk to your friends and family before you have the care conference, have those written out. And then setting that up through the doctor's office and with your care manager and whoever else is going to be involved. And then you guys all get on the same meeting, and you as a self-advocate or your family member can start the conversation with, here's some of the issues we're facing. Here's some of our frustrations. This is kind of what we would like the solution to be. We'd like to get your guys' feedback on how we can make this a better situation. And then round robin, be able to go around and just discuss that specific issue.
Thank you. So we wanted to just move on and talk a little bit about some of the important areas that we should be strong advocates for ourselves. So I know, Ashley, when you were talking about end of life. Tell us more about that, why we should be a strong advocate there.
So when it comes to end of life wishes, this is something a lot of people don't necessarily want to think about. However, it is very important to know about these things, right? Who are you going to have that is going to be that person that knows what it is that you want to have done? I always like to go back to having that power of attorney, having something written down, but not only that, but ensuring that that person that you want to do those decisions or make those decisions for you actually knows about it, right? So a really good example is my grandmother passed away 3 years ago, unfortunately. And when she passed away, it was a whole week-long thing. We didn't really know what was going on with her. The day that she passed away, I got a phone call from the hospital saying, well, your grandmother has decided to make you her power of attorney. I was really confused. I'm like, there's nothing written down. She's been nonverbal for a week. But I knew just from, she had lived with me for, grandpa's been with me for 12 years. So she had lived with me for 9 years. And I just knew from her living with me that she was very adamant. I never want to live in a vegetative state. Please don't ever let that happen to me. And I knew that that was one of her wishes. However, when it came down to it, when it came down to being at the hospital and making those decisions, it was a mess, right? Nothing was written down. Everybody was trying to figure out what to do. Are they really allowed to have me make these decisions for her, since she obviously can't make these decisions for herself? And that wasn't an easy thing on me, Now with my grandfather, he is still alive. He's 83 years old and a vet and stubborn. And that's what we love about him, right? He has told me multiple times, and I finally got him to agree to go put this down on paper to make our lives a lot easier, because those end of life wishes need to be brought to somebody's attention. I know what he wants, but again, going through the hospital and dealing with everything that needed to be done, it wasn't as easy as it could have been had I had everything written down. So getting those powers of attorney are very important, especially those medical power of attorney. Having a financial power of attorney is important as well. If you do not have somebody that is trusted, right? I am his trusted person. If you do not have somebody that is trusted on your bank account with you, then at least have a financial power of attorney as well, because otherwise that can create a big mess at the end as well.
So I'm just curious, if I was to poll the audience, and you don't have to respond, but who has grandchildren or children who know exactly what you want if something was to happen? A few. Well, more than I thought. Okay, so you guys have all had a conversation and people know where your decisions are and what you want to have happen should something occur. Okay, good. That's excellent. The other half of the room, I'd encourage you to have those conversations with someone so they know what the heck to do. Because I would have thought you would be pretty unique with your grandparents knowing.
Absolutely.
My children wouldn't know at all, so I need to have a conversation.
Well, and like my grandfather, just for instance, right? My grandfather has 2 sons. My mom is his stepdaughter, but he's my papa, right? I've had him forever. My mom kind of knows what he wants. His sons have no idea what he wants. That's why I finally was able to convince him to put it on paper, because when it comes down to it, I know that that is going to be a fight and a half if something does happen to him, because I know his sons are going to have a different opinion than I do, but I know what he wants.
And by him writing it down, he's informing everyone of what his decisions, his wishes, he's advocating for himself.
Correct. And that is a big part of him advocating for his end of life wishes when it does come down to that.
I missed that, but I hear laughter, so it was obviously humorous. Oh, surprise me. Yeah. I don't think children want to be surprised. And you may not want to be surprised with what they decide either. So, yeah. Chaplain Chaz, what's another important area where we need to advocate for ourselves?
Yeah, so I have a great example, and my grandma, bless her soul, was very outspoken. I remember one time we were in the parking lot and she got out of the car and she was handicapped. And a gentleman walked up and said, "Well, you don't look handicapped." And she said, "Well, you don't look stupid." So you get an idea of how my grandma was. Her name was Grandma Judy, and she actually, I work with Nevada Donor Network and I'm a huge advocate for organ and tissue donation. I think that even through tragedy, it can bring a lot of light, not only by saving lives, but there being a small purpose through your passing for your family. And she was a huge advocate, got the little heart at the DMV on her ID to be an organ or tissue donor. And she was on hospice and had cancer, but a big misconception is even if you have cancer that you can't be a tissue donor. And a lot of times you still can be, just so you guys are aware. And you can sign up through an app or online at the website. It's very easy. But again, you want to ensure that you're also bringing awareness and talking with your family about it. So anyways, when she passed, the hospice nurse came and did not notify the donor network. And when they called her, and there's a time sensitivity to this situation, my grandma's spouse, who is my other grandma, they were together 34 years, got the call a few hours later at 7 in the morning, and she was really caught off guard. And she said, "No, I don't want to do that." Well, my grandma would be absolutely mortified because she was able to donate to her tissue and her retinals, and she wanted that. But because she, I guess, didn't bring awareness of it and really speak it over with her spouse, that didn't happen. And so that's just an example of really doing the AAAs and talking about it, thinking, processing, asking the right questions, and taking the action, because one without the other may not get the end result that you're looking for.
So on that, if that is something that we wish to do, what would an action we can take? Because I have the little heart on my driver's license.
Absolutely.
I
So
thought about it, just thought it all naturally just happened, but
yeah, it's a great question. So if you go to their website or download the free Nevada donor app and you sign up through that, even if you have the heart on your phone, or I'm sorry, on your license, then you'll be able to get a number, and you can give that number to your family and friends and let them know, hey, I want to be a tissue donor. So if something happens to me, please call this number and notify them that I've passed. And that's an action that you can take to ensure. And then also, if you're on hospice or palliative care, then that's an important conversation to have. I have one more statistic to wrap into that. Out of 70% of American adults in that same study that knew about advanced directive or had heard of a form of it, only 7% of all adults in the United States, that's 7 out of 100, had actually even spoken to any of their physicians or doctors or PCP about their end of life wishes. That's staggering.
so they had end of life wishes, but hadn't spoken to their physician.
Correct. Yes.
And what's the importance about speaking to the physician?
Well, because they can also, when they are called, they can notify organ donation networks. They can, if there's any questions from the medical examiner's office or the hospice agencies when they're partnering with them and keeping them up to date on your care or palliative care, then they're able to talk about what your desires are and ensure that those happen. And if you're in the hospital as well and they come to visit you or are working with that care team, but if you don't talk about it, they don't know it. So
back to that awareness again. So what were your AAA? You had 3 A's. Can you just say what they were?
yeah,
again?
so that's first, it's approach, just having the courage to process and figure out what questions and what you actually want. I think a lot of times, a lot of these subjects are scary, especially if you've been with your wife for 30 years and you know how she is with remodels, and you're kind of afraid to start that bathroom project, but being able to process it and approach it, then driving awareness, having those conversations, difficult or not, and talking with your family and friends and or your care team, whether that's a social worker, a care manager, or someone assisting, helping navigate all your different wishes. And then there's action. So physically taking action via legal, filling out the appropriate documents. And for example, like with a pulse, not just filling out the documents, but ensuring that it's somewhere that everybody can see, and ensuring that you're taking those actions. So all together, I think, helps drive the end result you're looking for.
Does everyone know what PULSE is? No? Can you just briefly say what PULSE
Sure.
is?
So it stands for Physicians Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment. So in other words, if you have a terminal illness or a chronic illness that may be terminal down the road, you can have a physician fill out this pink paper that shows what your end of life wishes are. So a very common one is, I'll give you an example. I have an individual who's 94 years old and she does not want to be brought back if she passes. So she has on her pulse a DNR, which stands for do not resuscitate. And so when the paramedics come or the hospice nurse or anybody, they will not do CPR or resuscitator, which it can be very traumatic for the individual at that age and for the family. And so that is an actual legal physician's order. Advanced directive is a legal document. So they are different, but they work together. So one does not replace the other. They actually work in a cohesive partnership.
And where does that document go, that PULSE?
So it will go into, depending on the hospital that you get your care from. I always recommend if they don't ask for it, then you can send the hospital a copy. You can call down there and email it. Your primary physician or PCP, as well as a medical director if you're on palliative care or hospice. And then also, again, that action item, making sure that it's visible on the fridge. And I always, like my great aunt, she's almost 90 years old. She comes every 2 weeks to visit and spend the night. So I have a copy of her pulse on my fridge as well. So if something happens while she's visiting me, then I'm able to show the paramedics what her wishes were. So your family members, keep a copy in your car and with you at all times. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. It's great information. Can you repeat?
Yeah, it's a physician's order for sustaining treatment.
POLST.
Yes.
POLST?
Yep.
Physician's
And,
order for-
and it will go on a bright pink, you can't miss it document. You can't miss it, but it's really super bright. So
Thank you. So Teresa, can you, what's another area where that's really important as far as advocating for ourselves?
Well, a couple of things. First, unopposed, does it have an area for that you are an organ donor? Do you guys know? They should add that if they don't.
they should
it.
have that. Most commonly, they do not.
So I'm going to advocate for that, because if it's on, if you want to be an organ or tissue donor and it's on your post, that document is as bright as Ricky's. Is it Ricky?
Yes.
As her jacket, and it's on your refrigerator, so they know exactly to look for that. But boy, if they had instructions on being an organ or tissue donor, that'd be great. So I'm going to look into that. The other thing too is on a post, you sign it as well. So you sign it with your doctor showing that you agree. I don't know if you mentioned that. Did you? Probably did. So the area that I am a strong advocate for myself and for others is in healthcare. And the best example I can give you is a care conference, which Chaplain Chaz referred to earlier. And the care conference, again, is a conference that you can generally talk to the social worker or a nurse requesting that for yourself or for a loved one. And you can sit down with a specialty. So I had a gentleman who was at Renown, and he had been there 10 days and his daughter was out of state. And I said to her, I said, we can have a care conference. And she was not familiar with that. And I said, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write down all the questions you have of the doctors and the therapists, physical therapy, occupational speech therapy, and then I'll have questions as well. And we'll do a Zoom conference. And that's exactly what we did. And we had 3 doctors, amazingly, attend this care conference. And the daughter was able to get a real good idea of where her dad was and what we might need to be looking at moving forward. So I am a huge advocate, not only for myself, but for anyone to know that that is your right to have a care conference and not to be afraid of it. And if you are timid about it, then have a family member ask for a care conference. So
Is this end of life, or is this I broke my hip?
this can be anything. This can be, so I have care conferences in skilled nursing. I have care conferences in assisted living, in memory care, and at the hospital. So you can have it in any one of those environments. If you just want to get a standard of where my family member is at, and what do we need to be looking at, or what can we improve on, et cetera, that's what you can do. I've got a lady who has a hand up. Should she wait?
If you could just write your question down, and in the Q&A, we'll get to it. If you could just write it down, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to it.
There you go.
Ashley, you had another one you wanted to talk about, another area you felt was important for all of us.
Yes. So living, right? As living.
Well,
Mhm.
that's pretty important to all of us.
Like living situations. Where are you going to live? Thank you. So yes, where are you going to live? Right. As we age, sometimes it is hard to find the right place to go. Right. Sometimes our family or our friends may think that they know what's best for us, but maybe that's not exactly what we want. Right. So a really good example is 12 years ago, my parents needed to move and my grandparents didn't really have a place to go. They're like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? They definitely didn't want to go back to Sacramento to live with my grandfather's kids. Because that's a whole ordeal down there, right? Too many grandkids, too many great grandkids, way too much going on. So they came to me and said, hey, you have a spare bedroom And can we please come live with you? My answer was immediately yes. I didn't even think twice about it. The family in SAC kind of argued about that. No, they shouldn't be there. Well, I have a spare room. I'm a medical assistant. I can take care of them. Right. Which then turned into me being their advocate. In Reno, we have many, many, many different options. You can choose to stay in home or maybe downsize your home. You can go to an independent living community, an assisted living community, or if it comes down to, later on where maybe you're having a lot of memory issues, there are also those memory carers as well. There are some places here that have that transition from independent to assisted to memory care, which does help a lot because it makes you feel, you're in the same place. You may move rooms, but you are in the same place. However, when it does come to that again, having those thoughts and getting those thoughts out to everybody that it needs to get out to is what needs to happen, right? So again, if you don't have a family member or a loved one who can help speak up to you on that, that's where having a care manager can really help a lot, because those care managers can step in and be your voice, right? They can be your voice of reason. They're going to listen to you. They're going to know exactly what it is that you want. And they're going to ensure that they help mediate with the family. Hey, this is what mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whomever it is that you are to them, this is what they want.
Thank you. I think, Teresa, you had another one. Was it on legal, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about how important it is to have your legal documents taken care of. And it's not that hard. I mean, a lot of these things you can actually do online, and other times you can get basic wills and powers of attorney and living wills done without too much expense. But I can't tell you enough how much I think that that's important, especially for your adult children or whomever is going to be, or a power of attorney or trustee if you have a trust. It's just critically important that they know where that stuff is and what you want. So legal documents are my second area of really advocating for, that you take care of that. And I've got all my stuff, I like to walk my talk. So I have all of my things in a file cabinet. I've got all of my legal docs, all of my financial docs, all of my personal information in one place. So when my time comes, my kids are going to know exactly where to go. And my sister, who is my power of attorney, it's going to be easy for them.
So I'm curious, do all those people know that it's in your filing cabinet?
Yes,
they do.
Yes, they do. And your passwords, another thing. Passwords.
So
That
that's a
can
good
be
lead into
scary.
next month. We're actually having an attorney, actually the Schultz Law Group. There you are.
Yeah.
What's the back there? Rich Schultz will be here, and a CPA as well, talking about some of those things, as well as a whole lot of other things related. So thank you. Someone else wanted to add something?
I was just gonna say that could be scary, having those passwords there for your family. So thinking ahead, if maybe you're having a relationship with someone you don't want them to be aware of, maybe deleting those messages. And seriously, it's something that happened with my grandma, and I found out she was having an affair with a gentleman for many years, and I wish I had not read that. So think of your children. And then I just wanted to add one last one. I'm sorry, is spiritual care. That's not really something we think of, but whether you're atheist and or Catholic or Christian, Jewish, it's really important to take care of yourself and advocate for yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And so if you're involved in a church, someday you're not going to be able to go to that church or that place of worship. And I will tell you, one of the number one pre-grieving things that we address when I'm in somebody's home is they feel abandoned by their church because their pastor's so busy and they can't come. They aren't able to visit. So my thoughts are preparing for that. So maybe setting up a Bible study in your home if you can't go out of the home anymore with some of those church members. Maybe it's you're atheist and friendship is your religion, and for all of us, socialization. So maybe doing a weekly tea party. You look like you like tea parties. And I'm just kidding. Maybe it's a card game, but really thinking ahead, because at some point you're not going to be able to leave your home and still want to be independent and have that socialization.
I like that. Thank you. So my next question, I'm not sure who would like to take it, is what do we need to know that's different when it comes to advocating for someone else versus ourselves? Are there some differences? Are there some specific guidance if I'm going to advocate for someone? Are there things I should know in order to advocate for someone other than myself? Or is it all the same?
Oh no, it's definitely different.
How?
By becoming, so when we are advocating for ourselves, right? We know who we are, we know what we want, we know where it is we want to go, whether it be having notes written down, right? We've talked about that. When it comes to advocating for somebody else, yes, you have to have your notes written down. However, not only do you have to know yourself, but you have to know that person you are actually advocating for. So when it comes to that, really get to know them and remember that your thoughts and opinions might not be that person's thoughts and opinions, right? If I'm advocating for Chaplain Chaz, my thoughts are not the same as his thoughts. So I need to ensure that I really listen to that person, make sure you are listening to them. And also on the same note, make sure that that person that you have advocating for you is listening to you. Really, really good example. My grandfather, I know I've talked about him a little bit. I love him to pieces. He's my challenge. But why wouldn't he be, right? He wants to challenge everything I do. I'm his granddaughter. He's raised me since I was little. So it's what he does. However, when we go to the doctors, right? I am very adamant before we go to the doctor. We actually have an appointment on Wednesday of next week. The very first thing we're going to do this weekend is we're going to sit down together and we're going to talk about, hey, this is why you're going to the doctor. This is why the doctor called me and said, I want to see you. This is what she said. You tell me, what do you want to know from her? Right? So that way, when we are actually there, I can help keep him on track. And I can also ensure that any questions that he might have actually get answered. He wants to know if he gets a pacemaker, if he has to be in the hospital. How long does he have to be there? So those are questions that I'm going to ensure to ask, because I'm sure once we're there, he's going to completely forget what questions he wanted to ask, right? Another thing that we do when we are there is afterwards, I ask him, hey, did you have a full understanding? Luckily, his doctor at the VA is amazing, and I can message her at any point and she will always get back to me. So if there is something that maybe we didn't get answered while we were there, I can message her and ask her those questions. But I look for cues when I'm with him, right? So he will have a cue of this, which means I can't hear her. I don't know what she just said. If he starts like tugging at his ear, I don't understand what the heck she's saying right now. Can you break this down into English for me? Right? If he starts to tap me, he's done. And he is verbal, right? He's completely verbal, but he doesn't want to say it in front of her. He doesn't be like, I'm done. Can we just go home now? Right. So I know, hey, I need to wrap this up with the doctor. What is it that, let's get through this quickly. Let's get you back home so you can go watch your Criminal Minds or whatever it is that you're in the mood for today.
Chaplain Chaz.
I would
Do it.
just to piggyback off that, sometimes true love is tough love and making the decisions that we don't want to make. And it can be really difficult if we don't agree with the wishes of those we love, especially during those times. But it's super important to honor their wishes. And if they've given us the honor and privilege to advocate for them during those times, it's what's right to do what they had requested. And so that, back to what she had said earlier about making sure that you appoint the right person, making sure that even if it's not the person who you love the most, maybe it's the person you know for a fact is going to see your wishes through. That is an important decision and one that should not be taken lightly.
I think that's probably often overlooked. Yeah, sure, I can be an advocate for whoever, but then, yeah, sounds like our own biases and opinions and what we believe might get in the way often. Would that be a common thing you see when someone's trying to do the right thing, but getting in their own way?
Yeah, and also if you're being an advocate for somebody else, that's why these conversations are important. If you don't think that you can fulfill their wishes, and you know it beforehand, then it's your responsibility as that person's advocate to say, you know, I'm probably not the right person to see this through if something happens, because I don't agree with that. And I want to be, you know, someone of integrity and be honest with you. So that might be something to think about as well.
I think one of you were telling me also time, that someone agreed to be an advocate, but then didn't have the time to go to the doctor appointments. And who was that was telling you?
Yeah, that was me. And that is one of the things too, when you do start looking for those advocates to help you, ensure that they actually have the time to do it, right? Not everybody in your family has time to take the time off of work to take you to those appointments or to make those phone calls. They may say, oh, I can do it on my lunch. Well, what if their lunch is the same time as the doctor's lunch? So those phones are turned off and now they're not getting an answer. Or they'll say, oh yeah, I'll take care of that for you. But then a week down the road, you're like, hey, did you ever hear, or what's going on with this, right? So just like Chaplain Chaz was saying, it might not be that person that you love the most. Sometimes it may be somebody that you're not really 100% comfortable with on a personal level, but you know that they're going to do exactly what it is you want to do. And if you don't have that person, that's where looking, you know, elsewhere outside of family, loved ones, going to a care manager or having just somebody else who you know will be in your corner. That is the biggest thing that you have to do. Find that person that will advocate for you. Find that person that will have the time. My grandfather's lucky. I can take that time to take him to the appointments. Not everybody has that ability or that capability to take that time off or make those phone calls.
Thank you. Teresa.
So the question was, how can each of us be a better advocate for a loved one? And I started thinking about this a little bit more after we had talked last week. And as an adult child, I wish that I would have had the conversation with my parents. And these are some of the questions I wish I would have known. Who's on your team, mom and dad? Who's your lawyers? Who's your financial planners? Who are your accountants and doctors and specialists, in case I need to know? You know, do you have a will or a trust, and where is it? Do you have an advance directive, POAs, or a POLST? Are your beneficiaries up to date? That's a big one because that can change. What financial accounts do you have and where are they? Do you have stocks and bonds? Who are you invested with? What insurance do you have and where are the docs? Again, going back to what Brett said, does my family know where all of my stuff is? Yeah, we've got to know where they're at. It's nice that you have them, but as family members or advocates, we need to know where that information is. Where are your tax files? When and where would you consider moving? My mom always said that she wanted to move to classic residence when she was in her 70s. That would be her place, that would be her desire. It's now 5-star. But as she got older, she decided she wanted to stay at home. And so as we age, sometimes our wishes change. So, but we did ask that question, where, mom, if you want to move and you need more help, where would you like to go? 5-star or classic was the preference, but then she decided she wanted to stay at home. So we finally arrived on caregivers with her input, not just bringing them in. How do you envision your memorial service? It's a big deal. Are you an organ donor? And do you have a safety deposit box? Lots of elders still have safety deposit boxes, and where's the key? So that's another form of advocating, asking those questions.
It sounds like those questions, though, are something we should all be asking ourselves rather than waiting for our children to ask us. We should be able to answer them and make sure that whoever knows the answers.
Right. No, we all need to know. I mean, you need to know where that stuff is, and generally you do. But if you want someone to be your advocate, if you've got your family involved, they need to know where all this stuff is too. It's you know, when we pass away, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of emotion. And then to have all these other things on top of it just is, you almost have to delay the mourning of your loved ones. So if you can have some of this stuff taken care of before you pass, I don't know. I just wanted to mourn my mom and dad. So
not be trying to work out where everything is. And yeah, exactly. And I think also maybe part of it is having someone understand what that means. Like I know in trusts, sometimes they can be really complicated and things are divided between children in different ways. And then there's lack of understanding as to why mum and dad decided that, and then resentment, but maybe having a conversation and explaining this is my wishes and why might be helpful. Yeah. So my last question, I just wanted to, are there biases that people have as advocates for someone else that we need to be aware of? Is there a financial advisor? Could he be biased in terms of advocating for us, or our doctor or our attorney? Can you think of examples that we should be aware of where maybe other people are predisposed? They mean well for us, but for whatever reason, they might go in a different direction. I know Chaplain Chaz, you mentioned, I think it was Dr. Brown.
Yes, one of my good friends, he was a ER doctor for 30 years, and his name was Dr. Curtis Brown. He just retired, and he is an amazing man, but he brought up a really good point. He joined the Pulse, NevadaPulse.org board to help drive awareness and education. But he said, you know, as doctors, we take an oath and we're trained to be life-saving. And so at some point down the road, though, maybe when it's time for palliative care or hospice and comfort measures, they tend to wait till the last minute to recommend that. And anybody can self-refer themselves to hospice, but you know, it's really hard for doctors because of their hearts to say, okay, it's time to give up, or to you know, go on to that service. But it doesn't mean you're giving up. It means that you want to live your best life possible with comfort and dignity. And the other part that I'll add to that is there are great doctors out there, but there's also some who are, you know, have motives of financial. And so a lack of education, they think they can't bill or see their patients anymore. So that could be somewhere where they're not being your advocate, and they're thinking over more about the financial means. And the reality is you can still bill. They still can be your primary care physician, even through palliative care or hospice. And so those are good things to be able to educate your doctor on. And for you folks, when it is time, you know, we have patients who are on for years, as long as you can show the steady decline. And, you know, the sooner the better to take advantage of those benefits for you and your family, so that you can really focus on what's important, which is the time left and spending that focusing on your family and making memories.
So reading between the lines, I hear that there could be money in keeping me in hospital longer than me being somewhere else.
Unfortunately, yes. Yes.
That is something to be aware of. So what's another one? Where's another bias that we might see?
So one that I have seen and actually experienced is family members, right? So you may have somebody who's like, oh yeah, I'll do everything. Well, they just want to go in and drain the accounts, or, you know, take you for what you have, and then you're left with nothing when it does come time to, you know, move out or do whatever it is you need to do. So one of my biggest pieces of advice is really get to know the people. Make sure they do not have ulterior motives. Again, this kind of goes back to making sure you're picking that right advocate. Do they have the time to take you grocery shopping, right? If they're always saying, oh no, I'll just go do it for you. They don't bring you your receipt, they bring you your groceries, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, $500. I don't think I have $500 worth of food, right? So really make sure you have that trust in those people. I have seen it happen. So really getting to know them, ensure they don't have the ulterior motives. Again, this is why Grandma and Grandpa would not go back to Sacramento, and they asked for my spare room because they knew I could be trusted.
Teresa, I'd like you to talk about one that we spoke about, and that's too many people giving their opinions. Does anyone have lots of people giving opinions, different children, friends, family members? They've all got an opinion as to what you should do regarding whatever it might be?
Yeah, that happens. So I deal with family members and the elders, and I've made it a rule that I only will deal with one family member now. And the reason is because the adult children oftentimes are at cross purposes, unfortunately, and they bring that whatever it was in childhood with them along the way. And let me give you an example. So there was a family of 4 siblings. 2 were named in the trust as the trustees, and both were attorneys. Unfortunately, these 2 attorneys didn't care for each other. And so when the elder died, these 2 were fighting it out. And the other two siblings were like, oh, for goodness sake, this is ridiculous. And what ended up happening is they had to hire another trustee to handle the estate. It was that bad. So this happens all the time, unfortunately. So be careful of your kids or your loved ones. If they've got problems with one another, you need to be aware of that. You really do. Because you don't want them fighting after you're gone. You want to make sure your wishes and your needs are taken care of. And many times it's our children that can be at cross purposes. So I only deal with one family member when I'm navigating and advocating for the family and the elder. And I just say, it's fine that you talk to your siblings. That's great, but you be the one to talk to them. I'm not going to do it because I'm not a therapist. I'm not a mediator. I'm not any of that. So I make it very clear to my families.
And you shared one with us when people are giving you their input, how to say thank you and let them know you already have an advocate. I thought that was really good.
Right.
Can you share that?
Right. Sure. I think it's important because, and just going back to the siblings, they want to give you their input. And I always try and be respectful and say, thank you so much for your information. I'm going to keep that into consideration. I'm advocating for your dad. He's hired me, but thank you. The more information I have is good for me. So always be respectful and appreciative of the input that people give you.
But we can use that ourselves when we're advocating for ourselves.
Right.
Thank you for that input.
Right. Oh,
I
remember. I remember that. Yeah, we had talked last week. So I have another client whose husband is living with Alzheimer's, and she is getting so much information from concerned family and friends that are bringing her lots of information, and she is just overwhelmed. So she is able to now say, thank you so much, but I've hired an advocate and a navigator to help me through this, but thank you. People are well-meaning, but they can bombard you with information and it can be overwhelming.
Right, thank you. So I think it's time for some questions from our audience, but just before we jump to that, we have a couple of upcoming items. Next Thursday is our community bus tour. Who's going on the bus tour with us at 4 communities? A number of you, fantastic. I think, Alexa, we have 7 spaces available if we really fill up our buses. So I'll talk about it again in a moment, but if you would like to tour 4 of our local senior living communities, and they are 5-star, Mountain Lakes Estates, Clearwater at Ranchera, and Revel at Ranchera. We'll come back to that in a moment. On October the 13th, next month, we have the truth about a CPA and an attorney who walked into a bar. So that might be fun. And then in November, the truth about planning travel in retirement. And for those who weren't here last month, we had a conflict for this room. So November is actually on the 10th, not the 17th. So if you have the 17th written down, you'll be here on your own, or actually you'll be here with some totally different class. The 10th is the date for November. What else do we have? Oh, let me just go on this.
How they differ from each other, how they're the same, how to compare what they really want in a retirement community. We're so glad that you're here today. Real quick, we're just gonna kind of go over how today will work. First thing is we're gonna do a quick movie. Then we're going to head over to the fireside room. We'll have lunch and answer questions, and then we will also do a tour of this building and again.
I think anybody that is going into retirement, this is an ideal situation. When you consider the upkeep on a large home, this isn't that expensive. It's comparable to what we would be spending on upkeep in our own home.
Tours are great because it opens up your world to what the alternatives are out there for seniors in transition. And this is good not only for, obviously, for seniors.
The importance of.
So I just wanted to play that for those who aren't doing the tour, just to give you a little bit of a flavor. Now you don't need to come because you've seen it on the screen. No, just kidding. We're going to tour, as I said, 4 communities. We're going to have morning tea, beautiful lunch, probably afternoon food, drinks, and so forth. So if you would like to attend, and the whole idea of this is just to explore what other options are out there, even if you have no intention of ever moving from where you are, that's great. But just to be aware of what other options are out there for you or a loved one, if someone needs to make a change, just to know what the communities look like. So we'll all be together, so we don't have to worry about being sold on moving into a community, and we can easily ask questions and learn more. So a fun educational day, and that's next Thursday. And if you would like to attend, 7 spots left, Alexa. Yeah, see Alexa and she'll give you the detail that you need to have you signed up for that. So questions. I know, Luann, you had a question. If we could get a mic down here to begin with, if you wouldn't. Oh, yes. If you could come and join me up here. And who's my other mic runner? Vic. Vic, could you just quickly introduce yourself as one of our mic runners today?
Yes, I can. Good morning again, everybody. My name is Vic Denigris, and I am the Director of Community Relations for Amada Senior Care here in the Reno area. What we do, I'm sure a lot of familiar faces here, so you've probably heard me speak before, but for all the newcomers, we are an agency, a licensed in-home care agency that does provide PCAs or caregivers in home to provide non-medical assistance. Okay.
Thank you, Vic. And Joy.
Absolutely.
My name is Joy, and I'm with Mountain Lakes Estate Senior Living, actually one of the places you'll be visiting on the bus tour. We'll look forward to seeing you there. We are a fully independent retirement community on a little lake on the South Meadow Boulevard down here. And yeah, we're fully independent, provide meals and housekeeping, and really allow our residents to lock and leave and come and go as they wish. It's a nice thing after the pandemic and so many lockdowns. We're like, no more of that. All right. And I'll be running mics for you.
Thank you, Joy. So Joy's going to take this side of the room, Vic that side. What are we having for lunch on Thursday so I know which bus to get on?
I'm not sure, but it's
Not
going to
sure.
be good.
It's going to be good. Okay. So if you could go to Luann just here, we'll start first question or comment.
My question was related to the care conference. And if the person that you're advocating for lives in either assisted living or could be independent living, memory care, nursing home, is management from that facility a part of the care conference?
Generally, yes. I just had a care conference at Summit Estates, and the administrator was present and their nurse was present. So you can request who you want there. Often, if there's a conflict, sometimes that happens, but you can certainly request. Absolutely.
And can I piggyback? You can determine who's going to be there. So if I don't want that person for the community because they've been horrible to me, I don't have to have them involved.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But you need to make it, you're advocating once again. So let them know who ideally you would like to be there. And if there's someone that you don't want to be there, also make that known as well.
Mayor Brown.
We're talking about advocating. So I would like to advocate the Janelle Group for them helping me in a very short time, selling my house, helping me pack my house. And also we're looking for a house in Oklahoma, which they coordinated a real estate agent, and she has been, the whole group over there in Oklahoma has been very, very helpful.
Thank you for that unsolicited testimonial. It's going to cost me another $100, I guess. Yeah, we'll talk later. Thank you.
Hi, I have been advocating over something that I've had a.
Hold it a little bit closer if you can, Joe.
How's that? Oh, yeah, there we go. Anyway, doctors aren't always perfect. And I've had trouble with a specialist in a particular area. And I've written up a description of what happened to me that doesn't name names, it doesn't name places, but I don't know how to get that published. And, you know, the old letter to the editor just doesn't work much for the Reno Gazette Journal. They might pass away at any time. So I just don't know. Maybe there's a particular website that likes to take that sort of thing. Thank you.
Any thoughts, comments? We bring a microphone down. But yeah, do you guys have a suggestion? So is it, Joe, was this to make other people aware or make the providers aware? Both. Okay, both. How do you make providers aware and the general public?
So depending on the situation, and I'm very sorry that happened. But definitely depending on the situation, one of the things that you can do is actually send it directly to the medical board. I've actually had to do that myself for a totally unrelated situation with my son with a billing issue. But you can absolutely report that to the medical board, and they do investigations and they pull the charts. They go into all of that. So that is definitely a way that you can go, at least to let, you know, the medical community know. Yes. Yes. So you can, I'm trying to remember how I did it. I think I just Googled Nevada Medical Board. They're based out of Las Vegas. But there is definitely a way to look that up, and you can make reports to the medical board. Anybody can do that, whether it be a person from that medical provider or a patient.
Thank you, Ashley.
And you can also ask for second opinions too. You can always go to another doctor and ask for a second opinion. That is never not allowed. Always ask for a second opinion if you need one.
Yeah, please, Joe. Chaplain Chase. Grab it from so everyone can hear.
Okay. I did want to add too, if you're on Medicare and have a secondary insurance provider on top of Medicare, like Prominence, you have or should have a representative and their contact information. So when my grandma was not getting traction on certain things, we actually called that secondary Prominence's representative, and they were able to call the doctors on our behalf and set up appointments quicker and faster. And we were actually able to get traction that way. So if you have that secondary, I highly recommend you get the contact info for your representative.
Both my husband and my father were on hospice at the end of their lives, and I had to get doctor's orders for hospice. But Chaplain Chaz, you said a person can self-refer?
So yes, actually, it is a myth that you have to go through a doctor. And if somebody is telling you that, I'm sorry, but that is not accurate. I don't know what time frame that was, but you can call a hospice agency yourself, or for a family member or friend with their permission, and set up a schedule and give them permission to pull the records, and they will evaluate if you are hospice appropriate or not. There could have been a situation where the diagnosis, the doctor actually had to create a new diagnosis so that they would be hospice appropriate. That could have been the circumstance, but anybody can make a self-referral. And so if you're considering that for a family or friend, just give them a call, and the medical director and the team will tell you, yes, you can qualify for hospice, or no, you cannot. And same with palliative care. Palliative care is in-home visits once a month from a nurse practitioner that can write your prescriptions to save time. And also that's for anybody, for the most part, with a chronic illness that could be terminal down the road.
Any questions on this side? Sorry, Alexa. Did you have a question, or was more of a comment? Comment, okay. Any other questions? Who here, Joy?
Oh, thank you. I'm absolutely so impressed with all three of you speakers and the information that you brought. And I've got so many different spots on my notes here of what you suggest that I have some of the things in place with the documents, with how you deal with your family and things like that. When Teresa mentioned her thoughts on your list, I couldn't write fast enough. And I was wondering if it's possible to post those things, your list of suggestions of the documents and preparations at this point in time?
So about a week after each seminar, we put the recording, the video up on the Retired Living Truth Series website. So if you go to retiredlivingtruthseries.com, in the top right-hand corner, it says past seminars. You'll be able to go and just jump to the question and answer part, or wherever Teresa spoke about that. And if one of us have time, we'll try to type those out and post them there as well, because that'd be helpful. That was a great list you shared with us, Teresa. And thank you for that feedback. Great panelists. I noticed I didn't get a mention in the three. There wasn't a fourth. But no, these are the experts. Do we have a question down this side, Vic?
Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry. One moment. I'm told this back to this side.
So much of this is time sensitive. Can you give us any hints as to how to keep all this stuff updated? With, even you can change your mind and then forget to tell other people, maybe even your advocate, that you've changed your mind. Is there some kind of helpful hints as to how to keep that going forward and keep everything current?
I'll give you a personal example. So I, as I get older, I change my wishes, and I just keep going to my attorney and I just make edits to it. And then I let my power of attorney know that I've changed my will or my trust. So that's all about communicating. So whoever your person is, let them know that you've changed it. And that's the way to do it.
Anyone else? Suggestions?
I'm a big person on writing things down. I don't know what it is about that, but I love to have everything written down. I would, one of the things, like you said, you forget to tell somebody, right? So maybe you have a binder and you write it down and you just let your person know, hey, every once in a while, check in with me, right? I may forget to check in with you, but every once in a while, check in with me, whether it be, and you set that timeline every 60 days, every 90 days, once every 3 months, once every 5 months, whatever it is that you want, have that person check in so that they can just kind of keep that update as well. And again, if you have it written down and if it's something major that you do need to go back to your attorney to have changed legally, then you can do so at that time as well.
Right, thank you. And actually, I'll share one. Our attorney, the Schultz Law Group, who are one of the education partners, I don't know whether it was Melissa or Rich, suggested having an appointment every year on your calendar where you go back and look at those items. So every January, like January the 5th, I have on my calendar to go back and look at, has anything changed that would impact our trust, will, power of attorney? Are all the passwords up to date? Are there any new bank accounts? Because we keep them all in a document. And every year I update that, print it back out, put it in the binder. Or if we need to go and make a change, then booking a time with the attorney. And I found that's worked really well. Just setting an appointment with yourself once a year, just has anything changed? We had another question down. Oh, sorry, where are we? Here, thank you.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the lady who asked Teresa for her list. That was one of my questions to the where is blank, blank, blank list. I would love to get, I couldn't write that fast either. I also wanted to know, when you become an advocate for someone, do they have to sign a legal paper saying that you are the advocate? Is that how it works? Or can I just hire you and that's how it goes?
So so yes, you can hire somebody. Usually, like if you were to hire, I'm sure Teresa has the same thing as what we do. We just have like a contract, and it's not a contract saying you have to stay with us for so long. It's just, you're just signing like, hey, yes, I am giving you the okay to help me. Right. And then certain doctors' offices, as we know, HIPAA exists, right? And HIPAA exists for a reason. So when it does come down to, I may go with you to the doctor, and a lot of doctors will be okay with, yeah, come on in, it's fine. You can ask the questions for them while you're here. However, if you're not here with them, I'm not going to answer anything, right? At that point, then you would sign that paper at the doctor's office. Obviously, going to the hairdresser or, anything like that, you don't need that. They can speak their opinion for you. But as far as like the doctors and the hospitals, if it's not, again, power of attorney, you may not have let the hospital know, hey, this is my person. That's why having that, at least that power of attorney written down and legalized, is a great idea. Did that answer? I hope.
Yes. And where do you get a copy of this post?
Your doctor will have it.
So, okay, well, how many doctors have we gone through in the last 2 years? The minute we find one, they seem to move.
Oh,
So,
well, even if they move, if you fill out that form with that doctor, you're still going to have your pulse and it's still going to be recorded with the state. So even if so let's say you and your husband go down today and you each do your own pulse, you'll sign it and your doctor will sign it. And even if your doctor moves on, it's still valid. Does that make sense? Or did that answer your question? It did. You kind of. Okay, so, but a pulse is for you, not for your doctor. A pulse is something that you guys have in your home on your refrigerator, the color of Nikki's coat. And it is for emergency responders. They're going to look for that because they don't have a copy of your living will or your do not, they don't have that. So they are trained. That's the whole reason for a pulse. They are trained to look at that pulse to find out what you want. And it's been signed by a doctor, but we don't care where that doctor, once he signed it, you're done with them if they move on.
Thank you, Teresa, for explaining that. Let me keep this straight with Mike Runner so I don't get in trouble again. So let me check over this side. We're good. And where's the microphone? Oh, yes.
Two things. First of all, you asked or you suggested that we come up with a list of our wants. Can that list be typed and signed by us, or is it better to have it handwritten? First question.
You can you can absolutely type that out and then sign it. I would say to make it more like, if you don't want to go through an attorney or anything like that, what you can do is get a thank you, Vic, a notary. Yes. You saw my blank for a second. Yeah, you can get a notary, and there are also mobile notaries as well who will come to you, so you don't have to go to them.
Okay, thank you. Second question is, we've thrown out power of attorney, executor of a trust, and an advocate. Do we have to have all those? And is it better to have one outside the family? Should one be all of those?
You do not have to have one of each. You have to kind of see what's going to work the best for you, right? An advocate doesn't have to be your power of attorney. An advocate could simply be that person that goes with you to your doctors, or simply takes you and helps you be your voice of reason, right? They do not have to be the same person as your power of attorney. They can be, however. I know of somebody who has, like they use me as an advocate as being with the company that I'm at, but then they have their daughter as their power of attorney to make those final, like, hey, here's my medical power of attorney. You're the one that makes my medical decisions for me. And then with our company, we're able to actually help them like say, yes, this is the power of attorney, and they can say these things. And we keep copies of all those too, so that it's where it needs to be.
And we have seen too with our agency dealing with powers of attorney quite often, the power of attorney is actually out of state. It's a family member that does not live in state. So having the advocate or the care manager here in the local area is definitely beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions down here? And I was just thinking, so you were asked about the list that Teresa had suggested. How about we get that typed up and we have it in the handout for next month, because it kind of relates to a CPA and an attorney, our topic, and we'll provide it so you don't have to watch the video and write them all out. We'll include it in next month's handout. Can you remind me, Alexa or Annette, that we make sure we do that? Thank you.
Durable power of attorney, where does that come into play?
I am not an attorney, so I stay away from any questions like that. And is it next month?
I think come next month, and our
Next
attorney will
month,
answer that.
yeah. Sorry, but I'm not a lawyer. Well, there's powers of attorney for healthcare and finance, but that's as far as I'm going to go.
Any other questions before we wrap up? No, so if we don't have any other questions, weren't our panelists fantastic, as someone has already said? And you guys were fantastic for being here today and asking such great questions. So thank you again, and we wish you all a wonderful rest of the day and hope to see you next month. I'm just curious, who wrote down some topics for us for 2023? Anybody? Good, I look forward to reading them.